My name is Hannah, and I'm 33, a small-town graphic designer married to Caleb, whose wealthy family never quite welcomed me. At my sister-in-law, Bianca's wedding rehearsal dinner, I walked into the glittering vineyard hall, heart full of hope. Then I saw it. No place setting for me. Bianca smirked from the head table. We only reserve seats for important guests. She purred. The room laughed. My husband shrugged. Humiliated, I felt a spark of defiance ignite. Have you ever been made to feel small? Share where you're watching from below, and if this resonates, please like and subscribe. I stood there rooted to the polished floor of the vineyard's grand hall. Bianca's words still stinging like a slap. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow, but all I felt was cold. My dress, a navy silk I'd saved months for, suddenly felt like a costume. Caleb's hand brushed my elbow. "Don't make a scene," he whispered, his eyes darting to the head table where Bianca held court, her perfect curls catching the light. I forced a smile, my throat tight, and nodded. Fine, I'd play along, for now. A waiter young and flustered appeared with a folding chair, its metal legs scraping as he set it in the corner. "Sorry, ma'am," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I sank into it, my purse clutched in my lap, the locket inside warm against my palm. My mother's locket, tarnished but heavy with her memory, always steadied me when the world tilted. I pressed my fingers against it, grounding myself as the room buzzed with clinking glasses and laughter. Across the table, Bianca's mother, Patricia, leaned toward a woman in a pearl choker. Her voice carried just enough for me to hear. "She's so ordinary, isn't she?" The woman nodded, her lips curling. My cheeks burned. Ordinary. The word clawed at me, dragging up memories of the first time I met Caleb's family. 3 years ago, at a gala in their San Francisco penthouse. I'd worn a thrift store dress, my best effort, and Bianca had circled me like a shark. "Oh, Hannah," she'd said, "that's so quaintly retro." The room had tittered then, too. I sipped my water, the glass slick in my hand, and scanned for Caleb. He was laughing with Marcus, Bianca's fiancé, their shoulders relaxed, their world untouched. I wanted to call out to him, to make him see me, but my voice felt trapped. Instead, I caught the eye of Maddie, Caleb's cousin, seated a few chairs down. Her round face softened, her brows knitting with something like pity. She opened her mouth, then closed it, glancing at Bianca. I looked away, my stomach twisting. Even Maddie, sweet as she was, wouldn't cross that line. The toasts began, and Ethan, Caleb's younger brother, stood his glass raised. To Bianca's elegance, he set his smirk aimed at me, unlike some who could learn from her grace. The table erupted in chuckles, forks pausing midair. My hands trembled, the locket now a lifeline. Ethan had always been sharp-tongued, but this was deliberate, a blade meant to cut deep. I forced another smile. My teeth gritted and pretended to study the centerpiece, a cascade of white roses that mocked my corner chair. I couldn't stay here shrinking into myself. I stood smoothing my dress and murmured an excuse about needing air. The hall felt suffocating, the laughter louder with every step. I pushed through a side door into the vineyard's cool night, the rows of grapevines stretching into the dark. My breath hitched, and I pressed the locket to my chest, its familiar weight pulling me back from the edge. I wasn't ordinary. I wasn't nothing. But as the stars blinked above, I wondered how much more I could take before something broke. The night air was sharp, carrying the earthy scent of grapevines and damp soil. I stood between the rows, my heels sinking slightly into the ground, my breath visible in the chill. The laughter from the hall drifted out, a reminder of the world I didn't belong to. My fingers traced the locket's worn edges, and I closed my eyes, picturing my mother's face, her voice telling me to hold my head high. But tonight, that felt impossible. I wasn't sure how to keep standing. I turned back toward the hall, steeling myself. I couldn't just hide out here. If I left now, Bianca would win her smirk branded in my memory. I slipped back inside, the warmth hitting me like a wall. The dinner was in full swing, plates of seared duck and roasted figs circulating. I returned to my corner chair, hoping to blend into the shadows, but Patricia's gaze found me. She raised an eyebrow, then leaned toward Marcus's Aunt Clara, her whisper slicing through the chatter. Honestly, Caleb could have done better. My heart thudded, each word a needle. I gripped the table's edge, my knuckles whitening. Caleb was still at the head table now, joking with the groomsman, his tie loosened. I willed him to look at me to see how much this hurt, but he didn't. Instead, Bianca rose, her champagne flute gleaming, and called for attention. A special moment, she said, her voice syrupy. I'd like to thank everyone who truly belongs here. Her eyes locked on mine, and the room followed her gaze. My pulse raced. She wasn't done with me yet. The guests clapped, oblivious or complicit, I couldn't tell. Maddie across the room fidgeted with her napkin, her face pale. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, but I sat frozen, my smile a brittle mask. Then Ethan stood again, emboldened. He raised his glass, his grin sharp. To family unity, he said, though some of us are still learning what that means. The laughter was louder this time, a wave crashing over me. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with something hotter, angrier. I pushed my chair back, the scrape barely audible over the din, and headed for the restroom. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger's eyes, wide cheeks flushed. I splashed cold water on my face, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about a seat or a snide comment. This was them peeling away my place, my worth piece by piece. I thought of Caleb's gala 3 years ago when Bianca had forgotten to invite me to the family photo. I'd laughed it off then, but now it felt like a pattern, a campaign. Back in the hall, the band started a slow jazz number that made the room feel even more surreal. I lingered by the door, watching couples sway on the dance floor. Maddie caught my eye again, this time mouthing, "I'm sorry." I nodded, but it wasn't enough. I needed more than pity. I needed Caleb to stand up, to choose me. But as I watched him clap Marcus on the back, oblivious to my absence, a truth settled in. He wouldn't. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I slipped back to my chair, my resolve fraying. The locket felt heavier now, a reminder of who I'd been before this family tried to rewrite me. I wasn't sure what came next, but as Bianca's laughter rang out again, sharp and deliberate, I knew one thing. I couldn't keep swallowing this. Something had to give, and soon it wouldn't be me. The jazz band's melody curled through the vineyard hall, smooth and mocking, as I sat back in my corner chair. My fingers gripped the locket in my purse, its familiar weight the only thing keeping me from bolting. Bianca's laughter still echoed in my head, her eyes daring me to break. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Not yet. The room pulsed with energy, guests swaying on the dance floor, their silk dresses and tailored suits a world apart from my small-town roots. I felt like a ghost unseen unless they wanted a target. I scanned for Caleb, hoping for a glance, a sign he'd noticed my absence. He was by the bar now, clinking glasses with Marcus's cousins, his laugh easy and careless. My chest tightened. How could he stand there acting like I wasn't drowning? I wanted to march over, grab his arm, make him see me. But my legs felt heavy, pinned by the weight of everyone's judgment. Then it happened. Bianca glided toward me, her emerald gown catching the string lights. She stopped at my table, her smile sharp as a blade. "Hannah!" she said loud enough for nearby guests to turn. "You look so uncomfortable. Why don't you join the real party?" Her hand gestured to the dance floor, but her eyes said something else. "You don't belong." Before I could respond, she tilted her champagne flute, and a stream of red wine splashed across my dress. The fabric darkened, clinging to my thighs. "Oops," she cooed, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You should stick to simpler outfits, darling." The room seemed to pause, head swiveling. A few guests chuckled, thinking it a playful jab. Others whispered, their eyes darting between us. My face burned, the stain spreading like my shame. I stood my chair, scraping, and grabbed a napkin, dabbing uselessly at the mess. Bianca's lips curled, satisfied, and she sauntered back to the head table. I looked to Caleb, desperate for him to step in, but he was turned away, engrossed in some story, his back a silent betrayal. I stumbled toward the edge of the room, my breath shallow. The locket pressed against my palm, and I flashed back to a moment years ago. Bianca's voice smooth and cutting. On a yacht trip Caleb insisted we join. She'd convinced him to skip my birthday for it, saying, "Hannah won't mind, she's so low maintenance." I'd smiled through that too, but now the memory fueled a growing fire. This wasn't just one night, it was a campaign to erase me. Maddie caught my eye from across the room, her hands twisting together. She took a step toward me, but Bianca's sharp glance stopped her cold. Maddie retreated, her shoulders slumping, and I felt a pang of pity mixed with frustration. Even she couldn't break free. Then I noticed Lily, the young server, clearing plates nearby. Her eyes met mine, soft and knowing, like she'd seen this kind of cruelty before. She didn't speak, but her quiet nod felt like a lifeline, a reminder I wasn't entirely alone. I moved to a quiet alcove, the music fading behind me. My dress was ruined, the wine soaking through to my skin. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Clara Marcus's aunt passed by, her voice low but clear as she spoke to Patricia. "She's like a stray dog Caleb dragged in," she said. Patricia's laugh was a knife. My hands shook, rage bubbling beneath my hurt. They weren't just mocking me. They were rewriting me, and Caleb was letting them. The alcove's dim light hid me, but it couldn't shield me from the venom still seeping through the air. My dress clung to my legs, the wine's chill sinking deeper than my skin. I pressed my back against the wall, the locket now a burning weight in my hand. Clara's words echoed stray dog, and Patricia's laugh carved them into me. I wanted to run, to vanish into the vineyard's dark rose, but my feet wouldn't move. I was trapped not just by them, but by my own need to stay. The band shifted to a livelier tune, pulling guests to the dance floor in a swirl of glitter and grace. I watched detached as Caleb spun a cousin of Marcus's, his smile wide, oblivious. My stomach churned. How could he dance while I was crumbling? I took a step toward the crowd, thinking maybe I could pull him aside, make him hear me. But then Ethan's voice cut through, loud and deliberate from a nearby table. "Why didn't Caleb pick someone like Lauren?" he said, nodding toward Bianca's sleek friend who laughed into her wine. "You know, someone with actual class." The words landed like a punch, stealing my breath. Guests nearby smirked, their eyes flicking to me, then away, as if I were a stain they didn't want to acknowledge. My hands balled into fists, nails digging into my palms. Ethan knew I was listening. He wanted me to hear. I looked for Maddie, hoping for her quiet sympathy, but she was cornered by Bianca, who was whispering something that made Maddie's face tighten. Bianca's gaze darted to me, her lips curling just enough to twist the knife. I turned away, my chest heaving, and headed for the open bar, needing something to steady my shaking hands. The bartender, a kind-eyed older man, slid me a glass of water without a word. I sipped it, the cold doing little to dull the heat in my throat. Lily passed by, balancing a tray of empty glasses. She paused, her voice low. "You okay?" she asked, her small-town accent a faint echo of home. I nodded, too raw to speak, but her concern was a fleeting anchor in the storm. Then I heard Patricia again, her voice rising over the music, as she spoke to a group of Marcus's relatives. "It's such a shame," she said, her tone laced with pity. "Hannah tries so hard, but she'll never be one of us." The group nodded, their murmurs blending into a hum of agreement. My glass trembled, water sloshing onto my wrist. I set it down, my vision blurring. This wasn't just exclusion, it was erasure, a deliberate unmaking of who I was. I moved toward Caleb, desperate now, weaving through the crowd. He was laughing with Lauren of all people, her hand grazing his arm. I stopped short, my heart lurching. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly, but it was enough to make me feel invisible. I called his name, my voice barely audible over the music. He glanced up, his smile fading, and walked over, irritation flickering in his eyes. "What's wrong now?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Bianca's just stressed, Hannah. Can't you let it go? Let it go." The words were a slap worse than Ethan's taunts or Patricia's disdain. I stared at him, my husband, the man who'd promised to stand by me, and saw a stranger. My mouth opened, but no words came. The music swelled, the crowd closed in, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. I turned, pushing through the dancers, my pulse roaring in my ears. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay. Not when every word, every glance was stripping me bare. The vineyard hall spun around me, the jazz band's notes blurring into a dull roar. My legs carried me through the crowd, past swirling dresses and clinking glasses, until I reached the far wall. I pressed my palm against the cool plaster, my breath ragged. Caleb's words, "Let it go," burned in my chest, hotter than the wine stain on my dress, sharper than Patricia's disdain. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was unraveling, and the locket in my purse felt like the only thing tethering me to myself. The band paused, and Bianca's voice sliced through the chatter. Everyone, she called, her tone bright and commanding. "Let's gather for a special toast." My stomach dropped. I turned, catching her silhouette at the front of the room, her emerald gown shimmering under the chandeliers. She held a microphone, her smile wide, but her eyes locked on me. My pulse hammered. This wasn't over. She was coming for me again. I stayed by the wall, half hidden by a potted fern, hoping to disappear. But Bianca's gaze didn't waver. "Hannah," she said, her voice dripping with mock warmth. "Come up here, darling. We need your unique perspective." The room turned, dozens of faces swiveling toward me. My mouth went dry. I shook my head, barely a twitch, but she pressed on. "Don't be shy," she cooed. "Tell us how you managed to fit in with us." Laughter rippled through the crowd, soft at first, then bolder. My feet moved before I could think, drawn forward by some mix of dread and defiance. I crossed the room, the spotlight blinding my stained dress, a glaring spotlight of its own. Bianca handed me the microphone, her fingers brushing mine, cold and deliberate. I gripped it, the metal slick in my palm, and opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The room waited, their smirks a silent chant, "You don't belong." I glanced at Caleb standing near Marcus, his face a mask of discomfort. He looked away, his jaw tight, offering nothing. Patricia leaned forward in her seat, her pearl necklace glinting, her lips curved in anticipation. Ethan chuckled from the side, whispering something to Lauren that made her giggle. My throat closed, the air too thick to breathe. I wanted to scream, to hurl the microphone at Bianca's perfect face, but I stood frozen, a deer in their headlights. Then the screen behind Bianca flickered. A slideshow began, meant to celebrate her and Marcus. Photos of their engagement, their travels, their polished life. But something was off. A slide flashed, one I hadn't expected. It was me years ago at a community college fundraiser. My hair pulled back, my smile shy but proud. The caption in Bianca's elegant font read, "Hannah's Humble Beginnings." The room erupted in laughter, louder than before, a wave that crashed over me. My hands shook the microphone, amplifying my uneven breaths. Bianca's eyes gleamed her victory complete. She'd planned this, dug up that photo to strip me bare in front of everyone. My mind raced back to high school, to the girl who'd mocked my mother's death, her taunts echoing in this moment. I'd survived her by rising above, by proving her wrong. But this was different. This was public, calculated, and my husband was complicit in his silence. The laughter grew, and something inside me snapped a thread stretched too far. The laughter crashed over me, a relentless tide, as the slideshow lingered on my college photo. My hands shook the microphone, slipping in my grip, its feedback screeching through the hall. I wanted to speak, to throw their cruelty back at them, but my voice was gone, stolen by the weight of their eyes. Bianca stepped closer, her perfume sharp, and whispered, "Just for me. You really thought you could be one of us?" Her words were a blade, precise and final, carving out the last of my resolve. The screen shifted another slide this time, a candid of me at a family barbecue last summer, my apron smeared with sauce, my laugh frozen in time. The caption read, "Always trying too hard." The room roared again, Marcus's relatives clapping like it was a performance. Patricia's gaze was triumphant, her fingers drumming lightly on her glass. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, his smirk a mirror of Bianca's. I searched for Caleb, my last anchor, but he was half-turned, his shoulders hunched, avoiding the scene entirely. My knees buckled, and I steadied myself against the podium, the microphone clattering to the floor. The sound jolted the room, but only for a moment. The laughter resumed softer now, as if I were a joke they'd already tired of. I saw Maddie in the crowd, her eyes glistening, her hands clenched in her lap. She mouthed something, maybe my name, but it was swallowed by the noise. Lily, clearing plates at the edge of the room, froze, her face tight with second-hand pain. Their sympathy only made it worse, a reminder of how exposed I was. I bent to pick up the microphone, my movements slow, mechanical. The spotlight burned my skin, the stained dress a public confession of my failure to fit in. A memory surged unbidden of my mother's funeral, standing alone by her casket while classmates whispered about my thrift store shoes. I'd promised myself then I'd never let anyone make me feel that small again. But here I was, diminished the room's entertainment. Bianca's smile widened, sensing my defeat, and she raised her glass ready to seal the moment. My chest heaved, each breath a struggle. I wanted to run, to scream, to tear the screen down, but my body wouldn't move. The locket in my purse felt miles away, its comfort out of reach. Caleb's silence was louder than the laughter, a betrayal deeper than Bianca's games. I stood there raw and unraveling as the room closed in. Every part of me screamed to fight back, but I was drowning, and the shore was nowhere in sight. The laughter faded behind me as I stumbled out of the vineyard hall, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. My dress, stained and heavy, clung to my legs, but I didn't care. My chest burned, not just from Bianca's cruelty or the room's mockery, but from Caleb's silence, a wound that cut deeper than any slide. I reached into my purse, my fingers finding the locket, its worn surface a quiet pulse against my palm. I wasn't drowning anymore. Something else was rising, sharp and unyielding. I leaned against a wooden trellis, the vineyard stretching dark and endless before me. My breath steadied each inhale, pulling me further from the edge. I couldn't go back in there, not as their punching bag. But running wasn't the answer either. I'd spent years swallowing their jabs, smiling through the pain, hoping Caleb would see me. No more. Tonight, I'd rewrite the story they thought they controlled. Footsteps crunched behind me, and I turned to see Maddie, her face pale, her hands twisting together. "Hannah," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I should have said something. Her voice cracked, and I saw the weight she carried, years of Bianca's shadow crushing her too. I knotted my throat tight. "It's okay," I said, but it wasn't. "Not yet." Maddie hesitated, then added, "She's done worse. To me, to others. You don't deserve this." Her words sparked a plan forming in the haze of my anger. I pulled out my phone, my hands steady now, and found Lily's number from the note she'd slipped me earlier. I texted her, my fingers flying. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Her reply came fast. "Meet me at the staff break room, 10 minutes. I looked at Maddie, her eyes wide but resolute. "Come with me," I said. She nodded, and we slipped around the building, avoiding the glow of the hall's windows. The night felt alive, conspiratorial, as if it knew what I was about to do. In the break room, Lily was waiting, her apron folded on a table, her expression fierce. "I've seen Bianca bully everyone," she said, her voice low. "Staff, vendors, even her own friends. She's got a trail of it. Texts, voicemails, you name it." My heart raced. "Can you get me proof?" I asked. Lily nodded, pulling out her phone. "Already started." She showed me a screenshot, a text from Bianca to a caterer, vicious and demeaning. It was a start, a crack in Bianca's perfect mask. I turned to Maddie, who was chewing her lip, nervous but present. "What do you know?" I asked. She took a breath, then spilled a story about Bianca sabotaging her interview for a gallery job, spreading lies to make her look unreliable. I was too scared to fight back. Maddie admitted, her voice small. "I'm not anymore." Her courage fueled mine, and I felt the locket's weight, my mother's strength flowing through it. I wasn't just fighting for me now. I was fighting for all of us. Back at my car, I opened my laptop. My graphic design software, a familiar refuge. I started sketching a plan, not for chaos, but for truth. A video subtle but undeniable to play at the wedding reception. Something that would show Bianca's cruelty without letting me become her. My fingers moved with purpose, the screen glowing in the dark. I wasn't broken. I was building, and Bianca wouldn't see it coming. The laptop screen glowed in the dim car, my fingers dancing across the keys as I wove Bianca's cruelty into something undeniable. Lily's screenshots sat open beside me, each text a shard of evidence, Bianca berating a florist for a late delivery, mocking a makeup artist's accent, dismissing a server as trash. Maddie's story burned in my mind too, her quiet bravery a mirror to my own. I wasn't just building a video. I was crafting a mirror to hold up to Bianca's face, one she couldn't look away from. I paused, my hands hovering, and glanced at Maddie, who sat in the passenger seat, her knees pulled up. She was scrolling through her phone, digging for more proof. "I found this," she said, her voice steadier now. "An email from Bianca to my old boss claiming I was unreliable. She sent it the day before my interview." Maddie's eyes met mine, no longer timid. I nodded, saving the file. "That's perfect," I said. "It's personal, but it's bigger than us." Lily had slipped back to the hall to cover her shift. But she texted me a voice memo Bianca had left for the venue manager, her tone venomous over a minor table-setting error. I imported it into the project, layering it beneath a montage of Bianca's public smiles, her charity galas, her Instagram reels, her polished perfection. The contrast was stark, my design skills sharpening the truth into something elegant but brutal. I wasn't stooping to her level. I was rising above it, using my craft to reclaim my voice. My phone buzzed, Caleb's name flashing. I ignored it, my jaw tight. His silence in the hall had said enough, and I wasn't ready to hear his excuses. Instead, I focused on the timeline, adjusting transitions to ensure the video flowed seamlessly. It would play during the reception's welcome speech, disguised as a tribute to Bianca's journey to the altar. The irony felt right, her own spotlight turned against her. I saved the file, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Maddie looked up, her face lit by the dashboard's glow. What if she finds out she asked her voice catching? I leaned back, the locket warm in my pocket. She won't, I said. Not until it's too late. But if she does, we're not the ones who should be scared. Maddie nodded, a small smile breaking through. For the first time, I saw her as an ally, not just a victim of Bianca's reign. I drove us to a diner nearby, needing a break from the vineyard's suffocating air. Over coffee and greasy fries, I sketched out the final details on a napkin, the video's runtime, the moment it would play, the backup plan if the tech failed. Lily joined us, her shift done, and added her own ideas, her pragmatism grounding my vision. "We're not just exposing her," Lily said, stirring her tea. "We're showing everyone she's not untouchable." Her words settled in me, a quiet fire spreading. Back at my apartment, I worked through the night, the city's hum outside my window, a steady rhythm. I refined the video, adding subtle animations that made Bianca's words pulse on screen undeniable. My eyes burned, but I didn't stop. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was justice for me, for Maddie, for every person Bianca had crushed under her heel. I thought of my mother, her strength in the face of hardship, and felt her in me now, guiding my hands. As dawn broke, I exported the file, my finger hovering over the save button. The room was silent, the weight of what I'd done settling in. I slipped the locket from my pocket and held it to my lips, its cool metal a promise. I didn't need Caleb's approval or Bianca's acceptance. I was enough. I closed the laptop, my reflection faint in the screen, and sat in the quiet, ready for tomorrow. The ballroom's chandeliers cast a soft glow over the wedding reception, the air thick with the scent of lilies and champagne. I stood near the back, my hands clasped tightly, the locket tucked safely in my clutch. The video I'd crafted was cued, hidden in the reception's welcome montage, and my heart thudded with every second that passed. The crowd of 300 guests murmured, their faces lit with anticipation for Bianca and Marcus's grand entrance. I scanned for Maddie, catching her nervous nod from a side table. Lily was nearby, blending in with the serving staff, her eyes sharp and ready. The MC took the stage, his voice booming through the cathedral-like hall. A tribute to the bride, he announced, gesturing to the massive screen behind him. My throat tightened as the lights dimmed and the first notes of a string quartet played. The video began innocently, Bianca at her engagement party, radiant in white, then laughing on a beach with Marcus. The guests cooed, glasses raised. I held my breath, my fingers digging into my palms. Then it shifted. Bianca's voice, cold and cutting, echoed through the speakers, her text to the florist flashing on screen. "Your work is pathetic. Fix it, or you're done." The room stilled, murmurs fading. Another slide appeared, her voicemail to the venue manager, her tone venomous over a misplaced napkin. "You're all so incompetent," it sneered. The guests froze, their smiles slipping. I watched Bianca at the head table, her face draining of color, her fork clattering to her plate. Marcus leaned toward her, his brow furrowed, whispering something urgent. She shook her head, her hands gripping the tablecloth. The screen showed Maddie's email next, Bianca's lies about her reliability, stark against a photo of Maddie's hopeful smile. A gasp rippled through the crowd, heads turning to Maddie, who sat rigid, her eyes fixed on the floor. I felt a pang, not of guilt, but of solidarity. This was her moment, too. Patricia stood her chair, scraping, and marched toward the tech booth, her voice hissing for someone to stop the video. But the staff, briefed by Lily, let it play. Another text appeared, Bianca mocking a server's accent, calling her a nobody. Lily's gaze met mine across the room, a flicker of pride in her eyes. The room was silent now, the weight of Bianca's cruelty settling like dust. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some staring at their plates, others whispering to their neighbors. I stayed in the shadows, my pulse a steady drum. This wasn't about destruction. It was about truth, laid bare for all to see. Bianca's mask was gone, her perfection shattered in front of the people she'd worked so hard to impress. Marcus's family exchanged glances, their polished composure cracking. Ethan, seated near the front, slumped in his chair, his usual smirk replaced by a tight frown. The power had shifted, and they all felt it. Caleb appeared at my side, his face a storm of confusion and anger. "What did you do?" He whispered, his voice low but sharp. I turned to him, my gaze steady, and said nothing. His eyes searched mine, looking for the Hannah who'd always backed down, who'd smiled through the pain. She wasn't there anymore. The video looped to its end, the screen fading to black, and the silence that followed was heavier than any applause. I stood still, the room holding its breath, waiting for what came next. The ballroom's silence stretched a fragile thread, ready to snap. The screen stayed dark, but Bianca's exposed words lingered heavy in the air. I stood in the shadows, Caleb's question unanswered, his breath uneven beside me. I didn't look at him. My eyes were on Bianca, who sat motionless at the head table, her hands knotted in her lap. Marcus whispered to her again, his face tight, but she stared straight ahead, her jaw set like stone. The room waited, and I felt the weight of every gaze. Then Maddie stood, her chair creaking softly, her voice small but clear-cut through the hush. "I'm sorry, Hannah," she said, her eyes meeting mine, "for staying quiet too long." The guests shifted, some leaning forward, others looking away. Maddie's words weren't loud, but they carried a ripple that stirred the stillness. Bianca's head snapped toward her, her lips parting, but no sound came. Maddie sat down, her hands trembling, but her chin high, and I felt a quiet pride for her. Lily moved through the crowd, her tray steady, but her eyes gleamed with something fierce. A guest, an older woman in a velvet shawl, stopped her, murmuring praise for her courage in sharing the evidence. Lily nodded, her smile brief but real. I caught her glance, and we shared a silent understanding. She'd risked her job for this, and now the venue manager was watching her with new respect. The tide was turning, not just for me, but for all of us who'd been dismissed. Bianca rose abruptly, her gown rustling, and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The room tracked her whispers, trailing in her wake. Marcus followed, his expression unreadable, leaving their table empty. Patricia remained seated, her face a mask of icy control, but her fingers gripped her glass too tightly, betraying her. Ethan tried to speak, his voice loud with forced confidence, but no one listened. His words fell flat, and he sank back, his face flushed. Caleb touched my arm, his voice low. "We need to talk," he said, but it wasn't a request. It was an accusation. I pulled away, my eyes still on the crowd. "Not now," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. He stared at me, his frustration palpable, then turned and walked toward the bar, his shoulders stiff. I didn't follow. For the first time, his anger didn't scare me. I'd done what I had to, and the truth was out raw and undeniable. A guest near the front, a man with a press badge, tapped furiously on his phone, his face alight with the scandal. I overheard him mutter about a tweet, something about Bianca's fall from grace going viral. My stomach twisted, not with regret, but with the realization of how far this could spread. The MC cleared his throat, trying to restart the reception, but the energy had shifted. Guests spoke in hushed tones, their glances darting between me, the empty head table, and the silent screen. I slipped toward the back door, needing air, my clutch pressed to my chest. The locket inside felt heavier now, a reminder of the line I'd crossed. I'd wanted justice, not chaos, but the aftermath was messier than I'd planned. The night outside was cool, the stars sharp above the vineyard. I stood alone, the ballroom's hum distant, and felt the weight of what I'd unleashed. My victory was real, but it was hollow, and the cost was still unfolding. A week after the wedding, I sat on the edge of my apartment's balcony, the city's morning hum soft below. The air smelled of rain and coffee, and I cradled a mug, its warmth seeping into my hands. The locket rested on the table beside me, unclasped, its photo of my mother catching the dawn's light. The chaos of Bianca's reception felt distant, like a storm that had passed, leaving me to sift through what remained. I wasn't the same Hannah anymore, and that truth was both heavy and freeing. Caleb and I had started counseling, our first session raw and halting. He sat across from me in the therapist's office, his hands knotted, and admitted he'd stayed silent to keep peace with his family. "I was scared of losing them," he said, his voice low. "But I lost you instead." His words didn't erase the hurt, but they cracked open a door. I listened, my own voice steady, as I told him how his silence had broken me. We didn't fix everything that day, but we started, and that was enough for now. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me, and thought of my mother. I'd visited her grave yesterday, the cemetery quiet except for the rustle of leaves. I'd knelt by her headstone, tracing her name, and told her about the wedding, the video, the fallout. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt her strength in me, a quiet certainty that I'd done what I had to. The locket had been my anchor, but now I was starting to anchor myself. My phone buzzed, a message from Lily inviting me to coffee later. I smiled, remembering our diner talks, how she'd shared her own story of standing up to a cruel boss at her old job. "You reminded me I could be brave again," she'd said, her eyes bright over her tea. I typed a quick reply, eager to see her, to build on the friendship we'd stumbled into. Lily wasn't just a co-worker or a witness anymore. She was proof that kindness could cut through even the ugliest moments. I set the mug down and picked up my sketchbook, flipping to a new page. I'd started a project, something small, but mine, designing logos for local businesses in my hometown, free of charge. The first was for a bakery, its owner, a woman who'd known my mother. I sketched a loaf of bread, weaving in subtle curves that echoed my mother's handwriting. Each line felt like a step forward, a way to turn my pain into something tangible, something good. Inside the apartment was quiet, Caleb still at work. I glanced at the couch where we'd sat last night, talking until midnight. He'd promised to set boundaries with his family, to choose us over their approval. I believed him, not blindly, but because I saw the effort in his eyes. We were rebuilding piece by piece, and I was learning to trust that. I stood, stretching, and looked out at the city, its rooftops glinting in the rising sun. For the first time in weeks, I felt still, like I could breathe, without bracing for the next blow. I left the balcony and walked to the nearby park, the morning sun filtering through the oaks. The grass was damp under my sneakers, and I chose a bench by the pond, its surface rippling with the breeze. My sketchbook stayed closed. I didn't need it now. I just wanted to sit, to let the world move around me without pulling me under. A duck glided across the water, its path steady, and I envied its quiet purpose. My phone lit up with an email from Patricia, her name alone enough to tighten my chest. I opened it, expecting venom, but found a single line. "You've caused enough damage." I stared at the words, waiting for the old sting, the urge to shrink. It didn't come. I deleted the message, my finger steady, and felt a weight lift. Patricia's judgment no longer owned me. I didn't need her approval or anyone's to know my worth. Maddie had texted earlier, sharing that she'd started therapy, her first step toward untangling Bianca's hold. "You gave me courage," she wrote, and I pictured her soft smile, her newfound strength. I replied with a simple, "I'm proud of you," and meant it. Her healing wasn't mine to claim, but it wove into my own, a reminder that standing up could ripple beyond myself. I tucked the phone away, my hands free, and watched a child toss pebbles into the pond, each splash a fleeting mark. I thought of the bakery logo I'd finished last night, emailed to the owner, with a note about my mother's love for her cinnamon rolls. The owner had called her voice warm, saying it was perfect a gift. That small act tying my skill to my roots felt like reclaiming a piece of who I'd been before the vineyard, before the laughter. I wasn't erasing the hurt, but I was building around it brick by brick. Caleb and I had another counseling session tomorrow, and I felt ready not to fix everything, but to keep trying. We were learning to see each other again, not through his family's lens, but as partners. It was slow, sometimes, painful, but it was ours. I leaned back on the bench, the wood cool against my spine, and closed my eyes. The pond's gentle lapping, mixed with distant laughter, not mocking, just life moving on. I didn't need to be loud or right anymore. I didn't need to win. I just needed this, the soft hum of the world, the knowledge that I could sit here whole, without proving anything. The duck swam on, and I followed its path with my eyes, my breath slow and even. The storm was over, and I was still standing, not taller, not stronger, just me. And that was enough. 3 months after the wedding, I stood in my apartment's tiny kitchen, the smell of fresh paint lingering from the walls we'd redone last weekend. The morning light slanted through the window, catching the steam rising from my tea. I'd started drinking it instead of coffee, a small shift that felt like mine. The counter held a stack of printed flyers for the community art fair I was hosting today, my first big project since everything changed. I ran my finger over the bold title my name listed as organizer and felt a quiet pride. Caleb was in the living room flipping through a book on communication our counselor recommended. We'd been at it for weeks, peeling back layers of what went wrong. He'd started calling out his family's behavior, even hung up on Patricia when she tried to guilt him. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and I saw it in the way he looked at me now, like he was really seeing me. I sipped my tea, the warmth spreading, and let myself trust that we were finding our way. The mailbox had brought a letter from Bianca yesterday, her handwriting sharp on the envelope. I'd opened it alone expecting venom, but found something else, a reluctant apology. She admitted her cruelty came from insecurity, from fear of losing her place in the family's spotlight. I read it twice, then set it in a drawer. I didn't need to respond. Her words didn't erase the hurt, but they gave me closure, a door I could close without looking back. I glanced at the clock and grabbed my jacket, the flyers tucked under my arm. The art fair was at the community center, a block from my old high school. I'd spent weeks organizing it, pairing local artists with small businesses, including Lily's photography and my own designs. She'd texted me last night buzzing about her new role as the venue's lead coordinator, a job she'd earned after the wedding's fallout. Her growth mirrored mine, a reminder that truth could build as much as it broke. Outside, the air was crisp, the streets alive with Saturday morning bustle. I walked past a mural I'd helped paint last month, its vibrant swirls a nod to my hometown's river. Kids ran by, their laughter sharp and free, and I smiled, remembering how I'd once run these sidewalks dreaming of a bigger life. That girl was still in me, but she wasn't chasing anymore. She was here building something real, something hers. At the community center, I set up tables arranging Lily's framed photos and my posters. Volunteers milled around, their chatter warm and easy. I paused, taking in the hum of it all the way. It felt like home. My life wasn't loud or grand, but it was mine, stitched together from choices I'd made, not ones forced on me. I set down the last flyer, my hands steady, and breathed in the moment, letting it settle like dust after a long storm. The art fair buzzed with life, the community center's walls lined with color and light. I moved through the crowd, greeting neighbors, adjusting displays. Maddie arrived, her scarf bright against the gray day, and hugged me tightly. She'd brought a small painting, her first in years, and pointed to it with a shy grin. "It's because of you," she said, her voice steady. I shook my head, but my chest warmed. She was finding her way just as I was, step by quiet step. A local journalist approached, her notebook out, asking about the fair. She mentioned a scholarship fund in my name started after her article on Bianca's downfall went viral. I blinked, caught off guard, then knotted my throat tight. It was for small-town kids like I'd been chasing dreams against the odds. I didn't want the spotlight, but I accepted the honor, feeling its weight settle like a gift I hadn't expected. Ethan had emailed me last week a brief, stilted apology for his part in the wedding's cruelty. He was in therapy following Maddie's lead, trying to untangle his own resentment. I didn't reply, but I didn't resent him either. He was human, flawed like me. Patricia stayed distant, her silence a choice I no longer questioned. I'd stopped needing her to see me. My world was full without her. Caleb joined me later, helping stack chairs as the fair wound down. We worked in comfortable quiet, our hands brushing once a small spark of what we were rebuilding. He'd taken a new job, one that kept him out of his family's orbit, and I saw the relief in his posture. We weren't perfect, but we were honest, and that was a foundation I could stand on. I caught his eye, and he smiled, soft and real, a promise we were both keeping. As the last guests left, I stood by the mural I'd painted, its phoenix wings spread wide. I'd poured my healing into those strokes, each one a choice to rise, not in anger, but in truth. The wedding hadn't broken me. It had shown me my strength, not to destroy, but to build. I'd learned that worth isn't earned through others' eyes. It's carried inside a flame no one can snuff out. The lesson wasn't about revenge or victory. It was about choosing myself, even when the room laughed, even when the ones I loved looked away. It was about forgiving, not for them, but for the peace I deserved. I'd found that peace in small things, a brushstroke, a shared laugh, a morning alone. It wasn't loud, but it was mine, and it was enough. What moment made you realize your own strength? Share it below. I'd love to hear your story. If this journey resonated, please subscribe, or share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to healing, to finding your flame, and to carrying it forward.